were sat down in baking sun, cable ties behind her back. If you lift your head to offer any solidarity to the comrade ahead who's getting physically and mentally abused, your head is slapped back down on the ground. I've tried to bring baby formula to Gaza. How could you be treating an Irish citizen like this? And this is what happens when you normalize a state that's completely out of control for this length of time and you try and two sides it. They view us as animals. That was a comment they call us terrorist animals. They spat in Thiago, he's one of the leaders of the movement. They spat in his face. If they're doing this to people like me with the passport I have, imagine what they're doing to Palestinians when there's no repercussions for it at all and there's no diplomatic pressure on them to stop doing it at all. They have manufactured there a scenario where they could just kill one of us and they would probably get away with it because they have the backing of the most powerful people on earth. The main feeling is disappointment because you start off the journey and you do your training with the whole focus on reaching Gaza and setting up a humanitarian corridor. And so that's your sole focus. So when you realize that they're going to come, the initial feeling is just disappointment that you're not going to reach your goal, and also an anger, I suppose, that they have highlighted in their own media that they're going to intercept the boat, which is an international war crime. They have told you where they're going to bring you. They're going to bring you to a terrorist prison, a Kitsiot in the desert near the border with Egypt, and they just proceed and do those things. You know, so it's this kind of a bewilderment that if they're telling you what they're going to do and they're illegal across all international laws, everyone outside of Israeli law would decree that it's effectively a kidnapping and being brought to a prison with no charges against you whatsoever. I mean, we're just trying to bring baby formula to a besieged population. I suppose an anger kind of kicked in then, and it's just like, where is the international community and how long is this country going to operate with this level of impunity? There's literally not a country on earth, including the Americans, I think, that would get away with such impunity, and the world would like definitely make lots of pretty speeches, as Ireland is pretty good at, but in terms of real action or accountability, just doesn't seem to be anyone. So that was made us very resentful, I think. I think there's, you know what, like having spent a few days in their company, I personally don't believe that like everyone's a psychopath or like, you know, like everyone involved in the Nazi Germany project was a psychopath and a monster. I just feel like propaganda is a hell of a drug. And it feels like a society that has just drank the Kool-Aid. They've gone so far down the rabbit hole of anti-Arab agitprop and the idea that they are the eternal victims and that nobody can be victims other than them. And that if you criticize them in any way, shape or form, you're a supporter of Hamas and you're an anti-Semite. I just really feel like, I mean, even though that sounds ridiculous to you and I, that's really where they're at. So their mentality is if you're trying to help out this besieged population, you're not doing it for the good of the people, you're doing it to antagonize Israel, and you're probably sponsored by Hamas. So that's the propaganda that they went with. I mean, like the Alma boat that I left, by the time I left it, there's video evidence, was absolutely just replete with aid. Everywhere you can see there's aid. From all sorts of delegations. And then they went on the boat and they said there's no aid here whatsoever. And they just like, I think they filmed on one of the boats a mojito making machine and a box that they said had lots of bombs in it. Like, it's kind of like we're at the opening days of the genocide in terms of how ridiculous the propaganda is. And I think outside of their own little bubble, nobody's buying it anymore, but they just don't have anywhere to go. You know what I mean? They just have to double down. I mean, during the process while we were away, one day we'd pick up our phones and we were being described as like a selfie yacht. And then later on that day, the propaganda would go to, this is a Hamas funded mission. And it seemed very difficult to believe both things at the same time. It just seemed like scattergun propaganda from an administration that's completely running out of ideas as the amount of diplomatic pressure just increases on them all the time, you know? So like the Navy that came on board, there's mostly young guys. Like the guy who took me away for questioning, like, was borderline trembling. I would say it's his first interception. And again, I would just have on a very base level, a level of compassion for a young kid who's being brought into this army to carry out this obscene litany of war crimes. I don't excuse them in any way, but I do see him as a human being that's been propagandized, whatever. So that's the way in which I kind of met him, I suppose. I didn't really feel scared at all for that reason. The only thing that would scare you is like, A, the level of impunity I've been enjoying. You can't rule out that they're going to do something to you, even if you are non-violent, which is the way that we were. And B, he seemed so nervous. I was kind of thinking, this guy has got, like, you know, he's armed to the teeth and he seems like a really nervous kid. That to me seems very dangerous, you know? But as it turns out, that we had a light interception. Some of the interceptions weren't so light. Our guys were just pretty much like just trying to get the boat to Ashdod, and we were allowed to make tea, and we were actually allowed to sleep as well, which is unusual. A lot of the other boats, they'd like slap you if you were sleeping. It just seemed random, like as to how psychopathic the leader of the commandos was who'd get onto your boat. But that was, to be honest, that was the good part, because by the time we got to Ashdod, then we were handed over to their police services and army services, and they like pulled me off the boat. My head is literally forced down to the ground. My arms are in the air, and I just felt like they were acting as if they'd picked up a member of Al Qaeda. Like, you know, it was sadistic and it was sinister, but ridiculous at the same time, if you know what I mean. And then we're sat down in baking sun, cable ties behind our back. If you lift your head to offer any solidarity to the comrade ahead who's getting physically and mentally abused, your head is slapped back down on the ground. And I'm just sitting there going, I've tried to bring baby formula to Gaza. How could you be treating an Irish citizen like this? And this is what happens when you normalize a state that's completely out of control for this length of time, and you try and two sides it, as the Irish government and the Irish media have kind of done. This is where we end up. We end up a couple of days later in a prison cell with one of our delegates. He's a 75-year-old man, the most gentle man you'd ever meet in your life, Paddy Kelly, just simply asking for his insulin. They won't give him his insulin. We're concerned that he's going to die. And so there's a borderline riot in our wing of the prison. And eventually, instead of a doctor coming along, they just bring in a SWAT team and to try and restrain the protests. And I quote, the guard said, "We don't have any doctors for animals." So that's how they view us. Like, they view us as animals. That was a comment. They call us terrorist animals. They spat in Thiago. He's one of the leaders of the movement. They spat in his face. And like, I just kept thinking to myself, well, two things. One, if they're doing this to people like me with the passport I have, imagine what they're doing to Palestinians when there's no repercussions for it at all, and there's no diplomatic pressure on them to stop doing it at all. And secondly, how on earth does the world, again, allow this country to operate like this? Like, imagine if the Iranian regime or the Russian regime treated a 75-year-old Irish man like that. There would be widespread outrage, and rightly so. But somehow this Israeli exceptionalism, even 2 years into a genocide, still persists. I mean, a snapshot of, so there's no medicine for people, even if you've got diabetes and you might die. Like, they're quite happy to let you die. But as well as that, no lawyers. So they say, well, you speak to your lawyer later, but there's later never comes. You've no contact with the outside world. In our case, our cell, we've no yard time, so you can't get out of your cell. I was brought to this sham kind of trial with this judge, and I just said, like, I don't have my lawyer with me, and he's charging me with entering Israel illegally. And I'm like, dude, I was captured in international waters. Like, your bozo navy had to haul us for 10 hours to bring us to Israel. How did I enter Israel? You know what I mean? It's, as well as being immoral, it's kind of illogical. Everything that they're trying to do is totally illogical. And if I had committed a crime, how come I left so-called Israel without signing anything, without being charged with anything? You know, it's all a complete sham to try and intimidate you. But yeah, the scariest thing for me is the fact that it became very clear I'm not going to get any contact with the outside world. And I mean, my understanding of like prisons anywhere in the world is like, you get a call, you know, you'd get a phone call. We didn't get a phone call with the outside world. No water, no call, no medical attention whatsoever. And it definitely, you're left with your own thoughts then in a tiny cell with 12 or 13 other lads who haven't washed in weeks, who are going a bit stir crazy, and were threats looming overhead. Like, this is going to be 10 to 20 days. Somebody said to me at one point, and I was kind of thinking, like, I think I can do that, but I'm now really panicked for like my daughters and my partner and my friends in Ireland, who are all probably understandably thinking, that guy's not coming out. You know, they're not going to get him out. And that's what was really tormenting me, the fact that other people were really worried about me. And as it turns out, they really were worried about me. And now I'm kind of dealing with that guilt as well, like, you know, for even taking on the mission in the first place. They didn't kick the shit out of us, and they didn't kill us, right? So they didn't treat us like they treat Palestinians, because they don't want us to get out with too many marks on us. So I'm very aware that when I say it was kind of low-key torturous, I say that in the context of, for white people, it was pretty torturous, but it's nothing compared to what Palestinians go through. But he wasn't even allowed to pass on the time to us. He didn't even receive any water to give us. So like, I was demanding they'd just give us a bottle of water one day, like with my big Irish head on me. I was like, I'm going to collapse here. Like, I'm in a desert And instead of giving me water, they ushered me back on a bus and put on hot air. So they're kind of low key trying to kill you, like, you know what I mean? Like, or at least, you know, like in philosophy, they separate between killing and letting die. I think they'd be happy to let one of us die, like, and then they could frame it that, like, oh, look, whatever. And there was definitely a case of they're trying to antagonize you to the point where you do something that will allow them the chance to, like one night when we were protesting for Paddy to get his insulin, they come in to count you every 2 hours, and it's just to keep you awake and to psychologically torture you. But we hid inside in our toilet, and one of the lads held out a blanket so to obscure us so they couldn't count, and they freaked out totally, and the SWAT team burst through the door. All of them are armed to the teeth. It's like something out of a Quentin Tarantino movie or something. They have a dog with them who has a muzzle on, who's clearly going to eat the shit out of you if they let him off. And they're like, put the blanket down, put the blanket down. If you don't put it down now, we're going to shoot. We're going to shoot. And your man just dropped the blanket. And in that moment, I thought to myself, they have manufactured there a scenario where they could just kill one of us and they would probably get away with it because they have the backing of the most powerful people on earth. And that's what truly is scary. Not them themselves, because a lot of them look like they look scared. They look like they're running out of road. They know the world is caving in. It's classic siege mentality. There's a lot of terror in their eyes. But again, the thing that you would fear most is that they will, and they have gotten away with stuff like this before. So why not me? Well, they don't tell you anything. So I've just moved to another cell. They come to my cell. I don't know what time it is. I'm starting to wonder what day it is. They come to my cell. They call my name, say, you're leaving. I'm like, where am I going? Doesn't matter, put on your clothes. And I genuinely am being moved out at that point. I hadn't seen outside my cell in about 48 hours at that point. So I could be going to a wall to get shot, or I could be released. I just didn't know, to be honest. And then I moved into this other cell. There's a couple of Irish there, there's a couple of Swedish there, and there's a couple of French. And I'm kind of thinking, okay, I know there's a Greek plane has been chartered to leave. So I started to kind of just speculate. I wonder if they're just sticking some other Europeans on it. But right up until the end, the kind of low level torture continues. So they get you up at 5:30 in the morning. We're burled onto a bus with our passports at 6 o'clock, and nobody's gone to the toilet. No, I was actually trying to go to the toilet, and this little Hitler type pulled me out of the toilet to stop me from going for a pee. To put me on a bus, and I didn't leave that bus until 1:15. So about 6.5 hours of like a load of men. Like some of us, one of us was in our 80s. Nobody can go for a pee. Nobody can eat. Nobody can, it's just kind of petty cruelty. Like the way I would look at them, they're kind of like Timu Nazis or something, like they're not quite Nazi enough to be Nazis. Like they're trying too hard at it, like to be baddies. They're like terrible baddies. But then, of course, I suppose you see the full face when they're dealing with Palestinians as opposed to us or whatever, but yeah, right up until the last moment we got on the flight, it's kind of like, I'm going to try and torment you and torture you as much as you can so that you'll never come back here. And then by the time we got on the flight, we heard that the next mission has already got 100,000 signatures signed up for it. So whatever it is the Israelis are doing, you'd have to say, if you're going to appraise it, it's ineffective in terms of turning people off supporting Palestine. I just wish that there wouldn't have to be flotillas. I won't be going on the next one because my wife and kids will leave me. There's loads behind me who will go, but the point is they shouldn't have to go. They shouldn't have to be in this position. Like, if the Irish government showed a pair of balls and sanctioned this country and stopped this country and stopped the US from transporting weapons to this country to carry out the extermination, and if they just upheld international law, Ireland is a signatory to stop where it can any intervention of the Ireland is a signatory to the Geneva Convention on Genocide. So it needs to do everything it can to prevent genocide where it sees it. Instead of doing that, we still allow roaring trade with Israel. Until recently, the Irish Central Bank were buying Israeli war bonds. And as I say, the stain of stains is that our national airport is being used as a massive, massive part of the war machine. What I would describe actually as the genocide machine. We, the citizens, the civilians, were upholding international law to bring humanitarian aid to a besieged population. We have to remember that. As much as the right-wing media and Israeli politicians want to frame this as some sort of a jolly for narcissists to go off on our boat, are you joking me? Like if I wanted to boost my figures on Instagram, I think there's probably an easier way to do it than to go into the Mediterranean, like on a boat. I've never been on a boat before, be under attack from drone strikes and explosions in the sky, and end up incarcerated by the most unpredictable satanic army of modern times. So we're doing it to uphold international law. We're doing what the politicians should be doing, the bare minimum. And I just think if the Irish government and other Western governments grew a pair of balls and realised that this is the apartheid South Africa of our time, that's what we're dealing with. You have to stand up to a bully. A bully will never go, actually, I've come to the conclusion I'm doing the wrong thing. Let's now seek Palestinian justice and liberation. As long as we're waiting for our leaders to do the right thing, unfortunately, nothing's going to happen, and it's just going to be a people-led movement. So we need more people to be activated in this cause. If you don't care about Palestine, maybe you care about 75-year-old Irish people being treated with such level of disrespect that they were let to die and frog marched out of their prison cell at 2 o'clock in the morning, handcuffed. You know, a 75-year-old humanitarian. Even if you care about Palestine, if you care about Irish people, do you think that's cool? Like that a government can treat Irish people like that and still enjoy this level of impunity? I don't know. So look, we the civilians will keep doing the work of the government for them until the government actually stand up and do something. But let's remember that what we were doing was bringing humanitarian aid. What we were doing was upholding humanitarian law. We were doing the bare minimum, what our Western leaders have so spectacularly failed to do. And until they start doing what they're supposed to do, the people will keep filling the void for them.